This meeting today is both in person at NJIT, and thank you to NJIT for hosting us, and also online. We'll be discussing 5 different funding priorities outlined in the newly released RGGI scoping document. The scoping document provides detailed background on RGGI, the legislation governing New Jersey's participation. So the webinar today is going to be seeking feedback from you on the 5 different funding priorities outlined in our newly released RGGI scoping document. So this scoping document provides detailed background on RGGI, the legislation governing New Jersey's participation, and our proposed funding initiatives. And you can access this at nj.gov/RGGI/engage. So before we dive into the agenda, a little bit of housekeeping. All online participants are currently muted. At the end of the presentation, we'll have an opportunity for people from the in-person audience and the online audience to provide comments or ask questions. We will ask the in-person participants at that time to raise their hands, and we will take a few questions from you. We will walk to you with a microphone, and you'll be able to provide questions or comments at that point. We will then transition to taking comments and questions from the online audience. For the online audience, we will enable your microphone so that you can unmute yourself. We will also address questions that we've received prior to this meeting, and those questions will be dropped in our chat. Our panelists will try to address as many comments and questions as possible at the end of this presentation. This meeting is also being recorded. By being here, you agree to be recorded, and if you're not comfortable with being recorded, you are welcome to leave. This meeting will also be made available on our website at nj.gov/RGGI/engage. We will also circulate a link to the recording via our listserv after our last stakeholder meeting next week. Please keep individual contributions brief when you are given the opportunity to comment. We want to ensure as many guests, both in person and online, are able to participate in the discussion. I'm also asking folks to please keep your comments and questions to the topic at hand. This is your opportunity to provide meaningful feedback on how the state should invest its RGGI dollars. And the state agencies really want to hear your opinions on this. There are a lot of other environmental and societal issues we could be addressing, but today's meeting is really focused on potential RGGI investments, and we really want to hear your feedback. We're also asking folks to please be respectful in the chat. We have posted webinar chat ground rules, and we're asking participants to utilize the chat to indicate if they're having technical issues so that we can help everyone readily participate in the webinar. We're also asking that participants refrain from threadjacking and utilizing the chat for unrelated discussions. The chat is really meant to capture your comments and questions, which are directly related and pertain to this webinar. So the first half of today's webinar, you're going to hear some opening remarks from Paul Baldoff, Assistant Commissioner of Air, Energy, and Material Sustainability from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. Next up, you're going to hear from Bob Kettig, the Assistant Director of Climate Change, Clean Energy, and Sustainability at the Department of Environmental Protection. He will provide an overview of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, how it works, New Jersey's history with the program, and the laws and regulations governing the state's investments of its auction proceeds and greenhouse gas reduction efforts. Following this, representatives from the DEP, the Board of Public Utilities, and the Economic Development Authority will discuss the potential RGGI funding initiatives. They will go over the current landscape of greenhouse gas reduction policies and incentives in New Jersey and discuss in greater detail the potential projects and programs that each agency could fund with RGGI investments and how that could support the state's broader climate action goals. Following the presentations, we will dive into an open public comment session. I'm going to hand it off now to Paul Baldoff, our Assistant Commissioner, for some opening remarks.
Thank you, Helene, and good evening, everyone. Appreciate everyone coming, either virtual or in person. We're very excited about the second 3-year plan coming up. It was about 4 years ago that we started on this route with strategic plan, and you'll find out, if you don't know already, there's a lot of lessons learned we had. It was the first time we went through it. There's a lot of successes and a lot of things we need to tweak and get a little better at. The great news for the first 3 years was the last 2 years of the RGGI auctions, the clearing prices were much, much higher than anybody expected. So the revenue was significantly more than we budgeted. So there's a lot more money to go out and do the good things that we're going to be talking about. Um, as we talk about new initiatives tonight, you're also going to hear about some existing initiatives that we're going to continue through with in some way, shape, or form. We've had a lot of success in the transportation sector, for instance, in the first 3 years, and you're going to see pieces of that moving forward. One of the things I just want to, I'm only speaking for a few minutes so we can get to the nuts and bolts, but I do want to say that we're going to make a commitment in the second 3-year period to quite honestly do a little better job on our end, meaning the time it took us to get the grant money out in the street, the time it took us for, making decisions and going forward. We want this to be more routine. It's going to happen every 3 years. We want that money flow to be constant so we can see the results out in the street versus the money sitting in an account somewhere. We've changed a lot of internal processes along the way to help with that, but we still have steps to go. But that's a commitment from us that we will work with you. We know it can be frustrating at times, but I think we're going to make a lot of accomplishments and headway going forward. So it's really more seamless than anything else. And as the money comes in every quarter, the money goes out every quarter for the right things. And two things, just two quick takeaways before I hand it over to Bob Kettig. This really is kind of a simple thing in my mind. There's two pieces here. The first piece, when you look at these initiatives, is that we must have greenhouse gas reduction as part of this, right? That's the sole purpose of these funds coming in, and it's the sole purpose of them going out. So for every dollar we put out in the street, we need to be able to show an equivalent reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, whether in pounds or tons or whatever it may be. Putting any money out there in the street that doesn't do that is not what the law intended, and it's not what the regulatory requirements are. There's a lot of good things we can do with money, obviously, but if it, in Reggie's eyes, if it does not reduce greenhouse gas emissions, the funding should be coming from somewhere else. And the second piece is the first 3-year period, the dollars were almost solely focused on environmental justice communities, and that's gonna continue. There'll be no change there. I could be wrong, but to my knowledge, I don't think one transportation dollar went out that did not have some sort of environmental justice community tie. And that's great. Those are the communities that, whether it's mobile sources or stationary sources over the year, have been overburdened. So focusing dollars there is something we're going to continue to do through this second 3-year period, and I'm sure going forward, because there's always going to be a need there. But once again, I thank you for participating. We're looking forward to finishing the stakeholdering, getting a report out there, and going to the next round. This was a lot smoother than it was the first time, and I think it's going to continue to get better as we're all getting more experienced with the requirements and putting projects out there that really do what needs to be done in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you very much, and I'll turn it over to Bob Kettig now.
Thank you, Paul. Again, welcome everybody here tonight and online. I am Bob Kettig, Assistant Director of Climate Change, Clean Energy, and Sustainability at DEP, and I'm going to give you a kind of a high-level overview of what is RGGI, why the program exists, and what we're striving to accomplish with the RGGI Strategic Funding Plan. So what is RGGI? RGGI is a market-based program designed to cap and reduce carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuel units over 25 megawatts in capacity. And it's a key component of RGGI that the states are participating under their own statutory or regulatory authority. It's not a compact of states. States have a mandate to cap CO2 emissions, have like climate policies, and they are participating under their own fruition. States can come and go as their own authority dictates. So currently RGGI is 12 states, including New Jersey. And again, as I said, through statutes or regulations, states are participating. But states do promulgate individual state rules that are based on a common model rule and has kind of the key mechanics of the program, how the auction is designed, how the emissions are tracked, and how compliance is reconciled. So how RGGI works, can break it down to 3 steps. There is a regional cap is established for CO2 emissions in tons that is permitted to be emitted from the regulated fossil fuel units. Regulated sources are required to purchase in quarterly auctions allowances that equal CO2 emissions emitted from the sources over a 3-year control period. So at the end of this control period, sources are required to have secured through the auction or through third-party transactions, buying it from other auction participants, enough allowances to equal their emissions over a 3-year control period. The cap declines over a period of time, and that sends price signals to the market. So it's a commodity, there's a supply and demand for it, and as the cap declines, sending a signal to the market that there is a need to reduce emissions, and the price reflects the demand for those emissions. Lower emitting sources in this market have a competitive advantage. Zero carbon emitting sources, nuclear power or renewables that are participating in the wholesale electricity market, do not have to internalize any cost of the RGGI allowances. So zero emitting sources clearly have a market advantage as we're pricing carbon into the market. So why we're discussing here today is that states, through their own rules, take the proceeds from this auction and invest them in particular state initiatives. We'll be discussing in detail what New Jersey's law dictates that we do and what our plan is to use those funds consistent with the law for the next control period. So key tenets of RGGI, 2 key components of RGGI and how it reduces emissions. Now, Paul Baldock did a really good job in teeing this up for me. There is really 2 key ways that we reduce emissions, because that's why RGGI exists, right? We're using a market-based system to cap emissions in the electric generating sector and over time reduce those emissions. So through a declining cap, allowance prices are established, and that sends a signal to the electricity market. The cost of compliance is lower for lower emitting sources. So that's one key tenet of how emissions are reduced. The second is the state auction proceeds are invested and it's consistent with New Jersey's Global Warming Solutions Fund Act to reduce electric consumption and or reduce emissions. So reducing electric consumption, that does reduce emissions, and also provides through those investments a way for ratepayers to save money by benefiting from the investments of these proceeds in energy efficiency. And also our investments go to a the greenhouse gas mitigation efforts. The first the first funding plan was heavily weighted on transportation, and clearly transportation is the biggest emitting sector in New Jersey, so we achieve emission reductions from that. So the timeline of RGGI. So New Jersey has a long history in RGGI. It was one of the original states that was created the initial model rule and leading up to the first auction. I had the pleasure of being a staff person at that time and working with that first rule development. So, it was an untested concept at the time, dealing in this virtual commodity, trading CO2 allowances, cap and trade. It was talked about through, economic circles, environmental circles, and RGGI has demonstrated that a competitive, transparent market for carbon can exist and achieve the emission reductions that it's set out to do. So again, RGGI participates New Jersey participates in RGGI under the authority of the Global Warming Solutions Fund Act. New Jersey was in for the first control period, and then it exited RGGI. Governor Christie pulled New Jersey out of RGGI, and there was a period of time where we're not a participating state, but RGGI continued to operate, continued to have a competitive, transparent market, and continued to do what RGGI does through the tenets of the program in the participating states. So then through executive order, Governor Murphy established that New Jersey would be re-entering RGGI. We went through this process again. We adopted rules to get us back into RGGI, and we've been participating since January of 2020. The initiatives out there on the, just kind of give you where the first funding plan took us. Again, it was heavily invested in transportation, and with some of the efforts going to carbon sequestration through marsh and forest restoration projects. So the proceeds distribution, how we are chartered to be stewards of the money and achieve the reductions, the auction allowance money, is specified in statute in the Global Warming Solutions Fund Act. It enables New Jersey to participate, and it establishes specific state agency funding lanes to how we are going to allocate the RGGI funds. It sets clear boundaries that require agencies to spend RGGI funds with specific program areas. So I won't read the whole entire program for you, but essentially what it does is it divides the funds from the auction between the three agencies: the Economic Development Authority, the Board of Public Utilities, and the DEP. And the EDA is charged with 60% of the money, and that goes to funding largely commercial and industrial entities. The EDA funds that really is the agency that provides a lot of economic development centered around a green economy and emissions reduction. So they're charged with doing that. The Board of Public Utilities, again, their charge is really centered on the residential sector, with a focus on low and moderate income. So again, the Board of Public Utilities has the capacity to deal with a lot of clean energy initiatives, a lot of energy efficiency initiatives, and to the extent that they can create programs that reduce electric demand, that fulfills one of the key tenets of the program. And DEP is charged with 20% of the money as well, and it's divided up into two buckets, if you will. One goes to local governments, and the other one is allocated through grants that is run out of DEP that takes opportunities for forest and marsh tidal restoration. So, again, one of the key tenets, right, reducing carbon emissions. There is a great opportunity of reduction carbon emissions, even in a densely populated, very urban state like New Jersey, for making it a greener space. There's opportunity for sequestering that carbon, both in growing forests and our huge coastline and marsh restoration. So that's what the department is engaged with. Okay, so the strategic funding plan. So what kind of brought us to this point? So give you like a little historic. When RGGI was in the first time, it was, we kind of had a short period of time in it. We didn't get to spend, allocate very much of those funds, but it was kind of a lesson learned where it was, there's this 3 lanes that are dictated in the statute, but there's clearly opportunity to leverage the funds. While we have these lanes that are dictated, the agencies can work together. Maybe one agency has a mechanism that's more efficiently to give out the grant work. Another agency maybe has the expertise of dealing with specific commercial initiatives like EDA, and clearly the Board of Public Utility has the clean energy program and extensive resources and experience in the electric reduction side of it. So the thought was that rather than everybody kind of take the funding and go back to their own agencies on or off State Street and run your own programs, the funding plan allows us to publicly vet it, get feedback from all stakeholders, and allow agencies to coordinate and be responsive to that feedback and develop funding plans that get essentially more results for the dollar spent by allowing us to leverage the resources across the agencies. So there's the strategic funding plan. There's some. We take this very serious. That we call it the 5+1. There's 6 objectives that the funding plan. We look at it, and like Helene had touched on, there is a lot of really good ideas. There's a lot of needs to New Jersey where public funding can be leveraged to achieve great things. But we're looking at the 6 mandates that we have that have to be fulfilled in the funding plan. And 5 of them come from the Global Warming Solutions Fund Act, which is a net reduction in greenhouse gas emissions or net sequestration of carbon, which I had touched on. And again, significant reductions in greenhouse gas emissions and a reduction to the ratepayers is a key component. Again, and the investments have to be consistent with the 2050 Global Warming Response Act goals, our 80 by 50 report. So achieving the 80% reduction mandated in the Response Act by 8050. And key, these investments have to show that they are good investments relative to the cost of the project or program. So achieve reductions, reduction in energy consumption relative to the cost of the program. Reduction of energy use specified in the act, clearly benefits there. And then be directly responsive to the recommendations submitted to the department, to the legislature, to the Global Warming Response Act. Again, the Global Warming Response Act revised charges the various state agencies with really achieving an ambitious set of climate mitigation goals. So we're making sure that our investments in this are consistent with that, and provide co-benefits. So that's like a general statement, but these co-benefits, they could include co-pollutant emission reduction. Huge advantage of funding greenhouse gas reduction, electrification of transportation in urban communities is you do get significant greenhouse gas reduction from taking those high emitting vehicles off the road. But along with the CO2 reduction, you get a significant reduction in co-pollutants, including ground level ozone precursors. And, that's when we look at air quality days in New Jersey, we're striving to get, cleaner and better and reduce any ozone action days in the state. And then certainly 60, that not last, but not included in the act requirements, but consistent with Governor Murphy's executive order. We are charged with being directly responsive to the negative impacts on human health within and the adverse effects of climate change within New Jersey's environmental justice communities that have been most severely impacted by climate change and high emissions and environmental degradation. So quick review of the RGGI strategic funding plan from years 2020 to 2022. The first plan, we focused on 4 main initiatives. It was to catalyze clean and equitable transportation. So again, it was heavily transportation focused. Again, promote blue carbon. We're talking about the marshland coastal restoration. The department is running a grant program on that. Enhance forest and urban forest. There is a key component of the first plan is an extensive urban tree planting that not only sequesters carbon, but also helps with the heat islanding effect. Our impervious surfaces, cities are typically more susceptible to having those, it's hot in the city type effect. So again, greening those environments, providing shade and sequestering carbon, and through the EDA, creating a New Jersey Green Bank to fund various climate mitigation efforts. I knew I was going to hit the wrong button. Okay, so a quick overview again of the first strategic funding plan. Okay, so New Jersey's total proceeds from the period was over $372 million. And, as Paul had touched on, getting it out on the street, it has been challenging. This happened during the pandemic and supply chain constraints. Anybody that tried to purchase any kind of durable goods or a car lately knows that it's a challenging market to do that. So we're working through those, but there's $260 million has been dedicated to date. There's been 153 projects selected, and of those, 497 electric vehicles have been incentivized. That's probably going up. I bet you the slide is dated already today. And almost 17,000 trees to be planted. Again, that's largely in the urban forest grant program. And 56 acres of forest will be restored. And there's 155 acres of wetland is committed to be restored. And as of now, we are at about 209,000 metric tons of estimated lifetime CO2 emissions in tons have been avoided. So moving on to the next plan, we're looking at 5 initiatives we're taking input on. They are to advance healthy homes and a stronger grid. Again, to catalyze clean and equitable transportation, highest emitting source or sector in New Jersey. Continued commitment to strengthen New Jersey's forest and promote blue carbon, again, coastal habitat restoration and marsh restoration. And initiative 5 is we're looking at to work to mitigate the impacts of highly warming gases, particularly refrigerants. There's, that's very CO2 focused, most of the initiatives, but the emissions from HFCs, which is a highly warming gas, it has a very high global warming potential. What that just means is that for a ton of an HFC, it has many times, could be 1,000 times more potent on its impacts of warming in the atmosphere than CO2. So this initiative has the opportunity to provide kind of that bang for the buck, if you will, where leaky refrigerants can save money. Don't want to lose the commodity, and reducing that opportunity for leaking of a highly warming gas provides significant opportunity for greenhouse gas reduction. So again, thank you. I'm going to hand it off to my colleague from the Board of Public Utilities, Tara Boland, which is going to walk you through some more details about what we're planning for advancing healthy homes and a stronger grid. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Ooh, it is on. As Bob said, I'm Taryn Boland. I'm the Chief of Staff at the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities. And on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank everyone who made the trip out here to be with us in person today. And to those of you who are streaming on the Teams meeting, it's great to see folks interested in what their government is doing and how we're spending money on your behalf. And we really look forward to hearing your feedback on how we do that, because that is critical for how we move forward. Today's session focuses on all 5 of the proposed initiatives. For the BPU, we're really focused in on Initiative 1, advancing healthy homes and a stronger grid, and Initiative 2, catalyzing clean and equitable transportation. They're really tied to our role within the state's overall effort to combat climate change and drive the clean energy transition. I look forward to hearing your ideas this evening on what we, the board, can be doing in partnership with our sister agencies. And, for those of you who are maybe a little camera shy or team shy, please submit your written comments and encourage your friends to do the same. So first, how do buildings contribute to our emissions inventory? I think there's a lot of misconceptions about buildings and their role in the decarbonization effort. About a quarter of New Jersey's overall emissions come from residential and the commercial sector. And you may be wondering, why is that? How does that happen? Well, about 73% of our households are heated by natural gas. So that is a large contributor to why buildings are such an issue that we're focused on with reducing emissions. And another 10% or so come from delivered fuels like heating oil and propane. Just to provide a comparison for how we stack up against other states, the percentage of homes in New Jersey heated by gas is about 30% higher than the national average. Additionally, as the country is beginning to shift to electric air and water heating, it's important to know that New Jersey is also a little bit or way behind in the pack. Only 16% of our homes are heated by electricity, and that's less than half of the national average of 41%. We know that building electrification will lead to cost savings and yield beneficial health outcomes. We know strategically and equitably designed programs to help jumpstart this transition is critical, and that's one of the primary areas where the board is looking for input today. The framework for New Jersey's building decarbonization effort and overall emissions reductions roadmap starts with the 2019 Energy Master Plan. The EMP had 7 overall strategies to reduce emissions, and buildings was a primary focus. Additionally, we've been working with our sister agencies who are here tonight and the governor's office and other consultants and experts to craft how we further reduce emissions from this critical sector by participating in the Clean Buildings Working Group, Zero Energy Buildings Code Collaborative, and other partnerships and studies with which we are participating. And just recently, you may be aware the governor unveiled bold yet achievable and equitable goals for emissions, say that 5 times fast, within the building sector with his recent signing of Executive Order 316. It demonstrates how much work we have done to get to this point, but also highlights how far we still have to go to make a meaningful movement in building decarbonization. And while we've been working hard to transition energy efficiency programs over to the utilities per the Clean Energy Act that incentivizes utilities to reduce the amount of energy they sell, the board has also been working to ensure that new programs are put in place to serve all of New Jersey's residents, especially those in low income or overburdened communities. This is clearly demonstrated through our Whole House pilot program, which is a program that we are running this year in Trenton, hoping to get 100 homes or households to participate, where not only will they receive energy efficiency upgrades in the house, but we're also targeting health and safety issues in the home that oftentimes prevent the energy efficiency work from being done, something like mold remediation within the home. So we're particularly proud of that program, and we look forward to the benefits and the results of it, but we're also looking to utilize funding in this strategic round to really bring that program to scale statewide, and we look forward to hearing from all of you on that. And I think I'm going to turn it over a little bit to Olivia to talk about the CPACE program. Oh, I got one more slide. Sorry, I'm ahead of myself. I will let you talk about the CPACE program when you get there, because that's the EDA program. All of our work is leading us here for the new strategic funding plan. We want to ensure that we are investing funds in places that are guaranteed to yield significant results. We're looking to build a strong portfolio of electrification and energy efficiency programs that leverage the federal incentives that are now available and drive down the cost of building decarb efforts for our residents. Additionally, we want to provide dedicated funding for the Whole House pilot program. As I said before, we really want to bring that to scale across the state. And we are looking forward to hearing your feedback on the shared goals that we have. And now I will turn it over to Olivia.
Thanks, Taryn. I'm Olivia. I am a senior project officer with the EDA, along with the PACE program that Taryn just mentioned. The EDA, guided by that Global Warming Solutions Act, can provide grants and other forms of financial assistance to our commercial, institutional, and industrial entities to support the end-use energy efficiency projects, in addition to new efficient electric generation facilities with our RGGI funding. RGGI funding can also be used to help finance improvements and retrofit projects that will reduce commercial and industrial buildings' greenhouse gas emissions. In addition to the funding for implementation of existing renewable energy technologies and energy efficiency practices, the adoption of new technologies is also super important in further reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Through programs like the Clean Tech Sea Grant, hundreds of thousands of dollars in grant money has been awarded to emerging technologies throughout the state to support their ongoing research and development efforts here in New Jersey. And similar funding could be used for future RGGI auction proceeds as well. And then I think I'm handing off to Peg now to talk about transportation.
Hi, everyone. A longtime DEP employee and focusing the last 10 years or so on transportation decarbonization. Next slide. I think we all heard this already. Transportation is the biggest emitting sector of greenhouse gases in the state. Next slide. I think what I wanted to emphasize here is that our transportation decarbonization efforts do not begin or end with RGGI funding. We've been working on strategies, grants, incentives, policies, collaboration, and partnerships before RGGI started, and we will continue to do that during the RGGI funding process, and then even after the RGGI funding ends, if it ever ends. I think there is power in partnerships, and we are so pleased to have our sister agencies, BPU and EDA, at the table with us today, working towards our mutual goal of transportation decarbonization. I strongly believe that there is no one agency and no one initiative that is going to get us towards our 2050 goal. And we need to focus on everything, not just transportation, although my passion and my interest today here in front of you is transportation. The partnership to plug in that was formed in New Jersey several years ago was the governor's office recognition of the fact that we are partners in this transportation decarbonization effort, and we need to be coordinated and aligned as we move forward, working on parallel paths, but making sure that we all know our lanes and we don't overlap, duplicate, or contradict each other. Next slide. That's all right. I'm just going to wait. I can't see the exact details on there, but it's continuing the theme of we talk about our successes as a whole of government, as a holistic approach. So about a year ago, we put together a success mosaic that's summarized here. So this explains all of the EV incentive programs that are offered throughout the state by not just my agency, but Board of Public Utilities and EDA. And what you can see here is the depth and breadth of things that we are focusing on, not just grants and incentives, but consumer awareness, consumer education, dealer training. There's also policies and model ordinances that we have issued. So again, it's really a holistic approach of all agencies and all types of approaches. Next slide. So as Paul Baldoff mentioned in the welcoming remarks, we've been tremendously successful in spending RGGI dollars on transportation electrification, and his guess was correct. 100% of our RGGI funding has been spent in environmental justice communities to electrify fleets of school buses, garbage trucks, dump trucks, etc. So our suggestions moving forward, or our recommendations that we're soliciting comment on today, is to continue dedicating our 10% of the RGGI proceeds to continue those efforts. For example, we can continue to electrify vehicles owned by local government or that provide services to local residences. So that would be something like a garbage truck or a school bus. Second, we can consider funding EV charging hubs to serve residents in multi-unit dwellings who often don't have their own garage or parking space. And so if they are interested in buying an electric vehicle, that's a challenge when they don't have a dedicated parking space or a place to charge. So charging hubs could potentially expand access to electric vehicles to residents of multi-unit dwellings. We also know that the statistics show a lot of our ride-hailing drivers live in multi-unit dwellings. So providing charging hubs for those residents will also enable ride-hailing to become electric. And then finally, actually funding those electric ride sharing and ride hailing programs. We have a program almost ready to launch in the city of Trenton called Go Trenton, which was funded by RGGI dollars. It is an electric ride sharing and shuttle program based on a comprehensive community needs assessment that was done. We also just announced with the $70 million the other week, we will be funding 4 additional ride sharing and ride hailing programs, and those would include charging hubs. So our suggestions for all of you here tonight and online is whether we should continue with these 3 types of programs. Also interested if there are particular use cases that you have a passion about that aren't on this list, Are there things we can do differently in terms of the grant amounts or incentive amounts? And are there things that we could do differently or better to get the word out about the availability of these different funding options?
Thanks, Peg. We're just gonna keep handing the microphone back and forth. I'm Olivia again. You can go to the next slide. So the EDA has been proud of its successes so far with the New Jersey Zero Emission Incentive Program, or NJZIP for short, which is a voucher-style first come, first serve program. In contrast to our limited rollout from phase 1, which launched April 2021. The EDA is launching a phase 2 next Tuesday that will bring the pilot to potential purchasers statewide. NJZIP's purpose is to reduce that upfront cost of buying a zero emission medium or heavy duty vehicle for New Jersey businesses or institutions leveraging that RGGI funding. The second phase is testing new program functions, features, and eligibility, and is intended to build on our successes from the first phase, but also be responsive to a lot of the learnings from the first phase. And the EDA will continue to learn from, our next phase of the pilot program into a long-term program with this strategic funding plan allocation. New Jersey is also particularly interested in clean hydrogen applications for heavy-duty transportation projects such as like long-haul trucking or aviation, and its potential to alleviate environmental and health burdens and stimulate equitable economic development in our environmental justice communities, particularly those that are surrounding those busy ports. And finally, we know that public transportation is a clear part of the clean transportation transition, and we could look to support that as well. I will continue to encourage comments and feedback like my colleagues have, and I'll hand it back to Taryn now.
Thank you, Olivia. And thank you, Peg, for the overview of the collective work that's going on at the state around electrification of the transportation sector. It truly is a whole of government approach. And I think between you and Olivia and Kathleen of our staff, I think you guys spend more time working with each other than maybe with folks in your own agencies. So it really is a great, it really is a great collaborative effort. At the BPU, we also have a lot of EV programs. I think the slide before that demonstrated what all of the agencies are working on. Clearly shows that there's no shortage of opportunities to participate in the EV transition, but we are looking to use RGGI funding for how can we help some of these programs that have a lot of high demand and encourage EV adoption. So we have our current Charge Up EV program, which I think we funded about 16,000 vouchers for electric vehicle purchases. We have several programs for EV infrastructure throughout the state for both light duty, and also we've moved into the medium and heavy duty vehicle infrastructure sector through the RGGI proceeds that we have had. And so we're looking for your feedback on how we can improve these programs and expand upon them so that we can help reduce range anxiety among drivers throughout the state. We know that prevents a lot of folks from making that transition. And as Peg said, looking at places like multi-unit dwellings to help folks who don't have a dedicated driveway or garage to put their own charger in. How can we help those folks make the switch and have a place to charge up so that they don't feel that they're going to get on the road and run out of juice along the way. So this has also been, as Peg mentioned, a big focus of the administration. We have some lofty goals to reach in terms of EV adoption, and I think across all three agencies, there certainly has been a real uptick in the number of charging locations across the state, whether it's in places you can go out to eat or at state parks, or folks at their home or just in your downtown. So we look forward to expanding upon that work. And I'm not sure who
Hi there. I'm Lauren Sinclair. Sorry I couldn't be there in person tonight. Can you guys hear me? Can you just give me a thumbs up, Taryn? We're good. Okay. Do we want to move to the next slide? All right. So thanks, guys. Terrestrial landscapes play a really big role in our goals by actively and continuously sequestering and storing carbon from the atmosphere. So like we've seen a few times in this presentation so far, this graphic is a breakdown of greenhouse gas sources and sinks in New Jersey. And we can see at the bottom of this graphic in the dark green that terrestrial sinks, which include our forests and our coastal habitats, are sequestering approximately 9% of the state's total greenhouse gas emissions. So this means that the state's natural features sequestered more carbon than was generated by the industrial sector in the same year. And one of our goals is to increase that 8.9% sequestration rate by managing our forests and our coastal habitats with carbon in mind. Next slide. So for a little bit of background on carbon sequestration efforts in New Jersey to date, DEP has published several reports that include future planning and recommendations that link forests and coastal ecosystems with carbon. So the 80 by 50 report sets carbon emissions targets for the state under a 2050 timeline. The State Forest Action Plan is a federally mandated plan, and it was published in 2020 with an upcoming review in the year 2025. The Wetland Program Plan was revised this past year, and then the Natural and Working Land Strategy is currently being stakeholdered and drafted. Funding has also been released through the Urban and Community Forestry Grant Program, the Blue and Green Acres programs, and the Natural Climate Solutions Grant Program to implement forest and coastal projects that demonstrably increase carbon sequestration. Next slide. So for green carbon, we're going to focus on Initiative 3 of the Strategic Funding Plan draft, which is to strengthen New Jersey's forests. This initiative acknowledges the critical role that both traditional and urban and community forests play in the carbon cycle, and that in order to meet the state's 80 by 50 emissions reductions goals, that forest resources must be promoted, protected, and maintained across the state. So forests actively sequester and store carbon, as well as continuously remove it from the atmosphere. And in addition to storing and sequestering that carbon, urban and community forests also contribute to demand-side energy reductions by providing shade and insulation and reducing the need for air conditioning and heaters, so by mitigating the urban heat island effect. So DEP funded initiatives that we're looking for some comments on today could be dedicated to projects and programs that fund on-the-ground implementation of projects that create, restore, and enhance New Jersey's carbon sinks, such as forests and urban trees via the Natural Climate Solutions Grant Program. Support urban and community forestry in overburdened communities to help mitigate heat island effects and increase green spaces while keeping the green burden in mind. Promote the stewardship, conservation, and management of privately held forests through restoration and afforestation projects, and improve the reforestation and management of forests on public property to ensure that our public forests are healthy. So now I'm going to be handing this off to Josh Moody, who's going to be talking about blue carbon initiatives.
Thanks, Lauren. Like forests, wetlands can also store carbon and act as a terrestrial sink. And in this effort, by protecting and restoring some of these habitats, you can increase the carbon sink and you can build better for the future. So next slide, please. So under these efforts, some of the funding can be used to move towards projects that are dedicated to direct on-the-ground efforts that enhance and protect carbon stores in coastal marshes and SAV beds. They can be used for projects that help reestablish wetlands in buyout locations by investing in programs and actions that directly lead to enhanced conservation and restoration of wetlands. Another key is protecting areas that can serve as the wetlands of tomorrow, some of these transgression areas as wetlands move landward as a result of sea level rise. And also to identify and acquire some of these areas in order to maintain that migration buffer around the current extent of coastal wetlands. I think next we're going to be moving to Matt.
Thanks, Josh. Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Reeves. I'm an environmental specialist here at the Bureau of Climate Change and Clean Energy in the Department of Environmental Protection. Go to the next slide. Here on this slide, we're looking again at the 2020 greenhouse gas inventory. And found on the right, we're looking at the HFC section. And what HFC stands for is hydrofluorocarbons, or what Bob was referring to before as the refrigerant sector. Refrigerants are also known as short-lived climate pollutants, and as he was mentioning, that they could have thousands of times more of an impact than carbon dioxide on the same time scale. Go to the next. So some of the background on HFCs is relatively new. Just in 2020, New Jersey adopted EPA's SNAP-based phase down of HFC refrigerants. This law established a prohibition timeline for certain HFCs unacceptable in some end-use sectors, such as supermarket refrigeration systems, vending machines, and cold storage warehouses. Following upon that, also the department adopted the Greenhouse Gas Monitoring and Reporting Rule. This rule included requirements for owners of refrigeration systems and chillers with 50 pounds or more of charge to report information on the refrigeration system at their facility. This included the date of installation, the model, the full charge of the equipment, and the type of the high GWP refrigerant that was used. Building upon this recent work, the department and the EDA want to partner together on this new initiative titled Phase Down Highly Warming Refrigerants. Similar to what we were seeing in the transportation sector, we want to provide possible initiatives towards funding the incremental costs of low GWP commercial refrigeration systems or chillers at new facilities. We want to possibly replace the high GWP commercial refrigeration systems or chillers with lower alternatives, and especially placing these projects in overburden communities overall. Additionally, we want to possibly retrofit the existing high GWP commercial refrigeration systems or chillers within overburden communities with lower GWP refrigerants. Lastly, the department is curious to hear back any input in regards to funding leak repair of commercial grade refrigeration systems or other HFC emitting systems in overburden communities. Thank you. And now I'll pass it over to Helene.
Took a minute. Okay, so in conclusion of all the initiatives, we now have a matrix that you can see on the screen. So going back to those critical objectives that Bob went over, the 5+1, you can see collectively that all the initiatives have gone through and ranked those objectives as critical, and that together, all of the critical objectives, at least one of them has been ranked critical. So you can see through the Buildings Initiative 1, we have about 5 critical objectives ranked there, and sort of flows through all the initiatives. And this really means that when we're designing these programs and funding these types of projects, we're really narrowing in on these objectives to make sure that they're being achieved by the program design. So at this point, we're going to open up our public's comment session. What we have done is we've split it into sort of discrete topic focused areas, and we've just prepared some sort of like inspiration questions for folks. And we're going to look first generally for comments that pertain to the whole funding plan. And then we've allocated about 5 minutes if we have feedback on individual initiatives as well. We're going to be taking comments first from the in-person audience. And thank you so much for everybody that's here. And then switch to comments from the online audience. So anyone from the in-person audience, if you at this point want to raise your hand, we can come to with a mic to you. And for those that are online, please use the raise hand feature, which looks like a little hand. And at that point, we'll enable your mic and you'll be able to unmute. So anybody? Any takers? Sure, Jackie.
I wasn't sure.
Yep.
Hi, first I want to thank you for putting this together. My partner and I work in the city of Elizabeth. We've had great dealings with all of your organizations, so we really appreciate you bringing this to the public, and happy to share. I'm going to get this after, and we're going to share it with our youth group. We have a climate safe task force composed of youth, and then a youth task force at our housing authority. I wanted to hear just a little bit more about where we would find the refrigerants you are talking about. Thinking about a city such as Elizabeth, large metropolitan area, who would have that, and how would a local environmental nonprofit?
Sure, I can jump in here. Largely supermarkets, corner stores, places that have sort of those refrigeration units.
So for us, a lot of that cargo down in the port, there's a lot of refrigeration probably down there. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and what's actually interesting is we've recently passed our greenhouse gas monitoring and reporting rule, and so really large users of those refrigerants are now going to be reporting to the department, and we'll better be able to see and track their leaks over time and to help pinpoint the investments.
And it's the leaking of the refrigerant that causes the issue, and the disposal, obviously.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, for sure. Anybody else in the audience? Matt will facilitate.
Hi, good evening. Jonathan Gordon with the City of Newark, and we're big fans of the Reggie program. We've been greatly appreciative of all the contributions it's had back into our community. We're really excited for Reggie and also the Inflation Reduction Act. Would it be possible for us to see something like more localized green banks with the EDA so that we can support the work that we're going to potentially have from the Inflation Reduction Act? And then a second question of how can we get DCA more involved with Reggie and expanding some of our building needs and building codes, because as a municipality, they control a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, and I would love to get their input on that.
Great. I don't know, Olivia, do you want to answer about the green banks? That one not working.
I got it. Okay. Great question. As a representative of the EDA, I think we all know green banks are important, but I think will be plenty more to come on that. Happy to talk after as well and connect with some other people in the EDA. Didn't want to leave you hanging.
Taryn, would you?
I'm not going to answer about the green bank, but I would just say for the building, we have a building decarbonization work group that the governor established. DCA is a member of that and is at the table. Building codes is something that we're looking at. There's national standards, there's the state standards. And so we're looking at, how are other states moving forward here? How are the national standards maybe moving forward? And how can we potentially make changes here in New Jersey to align with the goals that we have around decarbonization. So that's definitely an issue that we're looking at, and DCA is very much at the table in those conversations. So, happy to connect with you after and make sure that we're getting feedback from the cities and municipalities across the state on what you would like to see and how we can incorporate those ideas.
Yeah, hi, my name is Michel Boufadel. I'm professor of environmental engineering at NJIT, and my question would be that these are great projects. You mentioned $280 million spent on EV and other great project, blue carbon, the green forestry. Could you explain a little bit how you guys are targeting universities? I mean, we're now involved with this project with the city of Newark, but I wonder, is there a particular, approach to target or to approach universities?
I don't know how you guys want to handle that, if maybe a rep from each agency wants to say a word or two.
Is the question about whether you are eligible for them?
No, but how you, it's not eligibility, it's like more of how you guys are approaching it. Like, is there, for example, how would you, the ideas, is there a flow of ideas between universities and free exchange of ideas between universities and various divisions? Like, I can't imagine there's a conference, for example. Is there annual conference, or they are like, I mean, this is a great session today, but this is just one session.
You wanna go?
But I'm not sure that we have
Yeah, I
anything
think-
in the pipeline.
I don't, for some, I don't think we have a roadshow that we're bringing to the universities other than obviously we're here tonight, but I think that's a great idea. We look to the universities a lot for support in the work that we're doing at state agencies. We work with them a lot at the BPU through Rutgers University's RU Cool program, and they're helping us shape some of the policies and programs that we are working on, not just specific to what we discussed tonight, but in general for New Jersey's clean energy program. We also look to the universities for staff and for the future, the folks who are going to come and help us do this work and carry forward, because we have a great resource here in the state of New Jersey with our wonderful, especially our public universities. But yeah, we'd love to learn more about how we can engage universities as a partner in this, and not just in doing the decarb work with us, because they're big consumers of energy themselves with the buildings that they have across the state. But I think just bringing this to the universities is a great idea.
No, yeah, no, excellent point. And we just kind of like, I think, give you, not maybe specific related to Reggie, but we touched on Rutgers work and Are You Cool? I know Rutgers does extensive work as far as the natural working lands development, clearly the state climatologist with sea level rise. There's a whole parallel part of the department. We're really focused on mitigation. There's the resiliency and adaptation side of things. Nick Angarone heads that up, and there's a lot of work being done there. Montclair hosts an annual sustainability summit that is pretty well attended. And, this is one thing that's, interesting about universities just over the years, they've served as really like forward-thinking energy use exampents. Princeton has a kind of a trigen type application where they're getting a lot of waste heat and incorporating a lot of renewables. Stockton is using a geothermal system, and they've been used by the department as examples of a commercial success. And so, yes, Professor, would welcome the opportunity to identify opportunities to collaborate, certainly with find institution like NGIT and use this as some sort of vetting of innovative ideas, because we certainly want to continue to leverage universities in Jersey and push the boundaries of that.
Hi, Mark Scotland, New Jersey, longtime New Jersey resident. Shout out to a lady named Peg Hanna, who introduced me to a gentleman named Rob Shell to get involved in some initiatives. So proud of all of the work that New Jersey is doing and has done. The transportation sector, sure. Number one sector, climate change, a serious structural problem. Energy transitions take the longest, most complex. We know that. So with that, there are, I know so much of the focus is on EVs and a lot of incentives there, and I understand that. There are also new technologies that are emerging from manufacturers, things that are coming out of California, and these are a good enhancement to what is occurring now with the overall transition. So, like I said, it takes a village. There's multiple paths and avenues that have to occur. I just look at the funds that are spent out of New Jersey for EV and environmental justice communities. If there is a mechanism where environmental justice communities, underserved communities, and so appreciate all that has gone there thus far, if there are additional incentives that pay for themselves and can galvanize more individuals who can't purchase electric vehicles, but they can get in the game, is that something that would be of interest to you all to talk about? Because I'm happy to share the work that's been done in that space.
I just want to add on to that. As I sat down and looked at this, I messaged the Housing Authority of the City of Elizabeth. We have an excellent ongoing relationship. And I said, oh my God, the money's going to fall from the sky for electric vehicles and infrastructure. What do you want to do? I don't think we're there just yet. At some point, it's something we'd like to consider for residents as our numbers changed in percentage owned gas to electric. We have some time for that. I said, think about it. Money's falling from the sky. He said, there's this whole socioeconomic issue with the electric cars in our demographic that we have to work out before we could take money like that. So I just wanted to share that with you because it was very relevant.
Thank you.
There we go. Thank you, Mark. So I think I have a couple angles that I'm going to tackle your question from. I think maybe one of the things you were alluding to is the recognizing the fact that the existing fleet of internal combustion engine vehicles are going to be on the road for a long time. We will not have 6 million registered EVs in the state before I retire, we'll just say it that way. So making sure that the existing fleet is well maintained is a core focus of our statewide inspection and maintenance program. Are there ways to identify high emitters and to make sure the vehicles are repaired more quickly? Sure. We would need our friends at the Motor Vehicle Commission to be in on that discussion with us, but that's something that we have looked at in the past, doing things like remote sensing at high trafficked corridors to try to identify the highest emitters and get them pulled in for an inspection. So to the extent that you are alluding to the existing fleet and the importance of that, our inspection and maintenance program is important. We also are working on a regulatory adoption to adopt some of California's emission standards. We call it the low NOx omnibus rule. So that will further ratchet down on the emissions from new internal combustion engines that can be sold and registered in the state. Again, that's a recognition that it will take quite a long time for the fleet to completely turn over. And then the third thing, which maybe is more what you were suggesting, is what I call e-mobility or electric mobility. And that's been I'll call it a pet project, a passion of mine, probably for 5 years now, starting when I went to Rocky Mountain Institute with a bunch of fantastic and really smart people from all over the country to look at innovative ways to bring clean transportation to environmental justice communities. And the result of that work was a project called one of the first results of that work was a project called Go Trenton, which will be launched very soon. Our partners, the grantee in that space was ISLES, which is a job creation economic development nonprofit in the city of Trenton. They are working with the residents of the city of Trenton to try to understand where they need transportation to and from, and then providing electric forms of transportation for them to get to and from. I don't think that approach necessarily is right for every single EJ community. It's not necessarily right for every non-EJ community. So I absolutely recognize that we need a very curated approach to bring electric mobility to overburdened communities. It's going to take a lot of rolling up our sleeves, a lot of community dialogue, and a lot of resources brought to bear to figure out how to do that. So it's sort of a non-answer. It's more just a recognition that I 100% understand the importance of that, and me and my team are committed to trying to work on additional solutions and launch additional projects for that. Okay, thank you for the comments.
Are there any other comments in person?
Check. We have 3 pre-registered questions that I could go through.
Okay, sure.
The first one is New Jersey encouraging the use of low GWP refrigerants such as carbon dioxide?
Sure, I can answer that. I mean, we're looking to really pilot an incentive program, and I think everything's on the table, including CO2, which would be considered lower GWP.
Thank you. I believe we have 1 hand raised.
So Kristen Ace, I think your mic is now enabled if you want to unmute.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kristen Ace. I'm with the Morristown Shade Tree Commission. Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Thank you so much for this presentation. It's really broken down RGGI into a way that I can really understand it. And I think all the work that you're doing is amazing. And I agree that it's going to take all of these initiatives to help us reach our goals. I am here just to put a plug in for Initiative 3, the strengthening of New Jersey forests. Because I'm on the Shade Tree Commission, I'm boots on the ground, and I know how much it's going to take to reforest and reclaim our forests from the invasive species that are destroying them. Particularly in the underserved sectors, we can't always count on volunteers to do this work with us because people work so many different jobs and because people are tired at the end of their day. We need also money to help hire people to help us remove the invasives and get the forests ready to be reforested. And in some places we have to do deer protection to save the forest. So I really appreciate that strengthening our forests is on your initiative. I just want you to know how super important it is, and that we're all in on the shade tree commissions here working in our public forests, ready for whatever money becomes available for us to do the work that we need to do. So thank you so much for letting me speak.
Thank you, Kristen. If anybody else from the online audience wants to raise their hand at this point, we will walk through any questions or comments you'd like to make. Or you can drop questions or comments in the chat and we can pose them to the group. Anybody else in person? Yeah, oh, okay, one more.
Our residents have some of the smallest carbon footprints in the country in Newark. I haven't checked this year's emissions rating, but when it comes to housing and access to capital, it's really important for us to be able to identify how can we build more housing. This is an issue throughout most of our urban centers in the state. Is there any possibility that we can look towards potential sources of funding for transit-oriented housing within New Jersey? Would that cover any of the initiatives?
I don't know that that would come through the RGGI funding source. I know that's probably an issue that the Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency, within DCA would be addressing. I know they've done a transit-oriented development in the past in other towns and cities in the state, and so I think that would probably be a question more for them. But again, we work across all agencies. We all work together on things, so we can definitely bring that question to them.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else online? All right, well, if we don't have any other comments or questions, I can flip through these slides real quick. Timing, so the next funding plan, we look to be releasing this sometime this spring, so in the next month or 2 months or so. And then once that is released out there, we've already started to get in some auction proceeds from this year. And so that funding will be available. I don't know what the amount was off the top of my head, but then the agencies and administrating programs can start to make those investments and push that funding out through existing grant programs. So one final plug, we do have an online survey and you can use your QR code scanners at this point to take the survey and to provide more feedback. So if you have thought of something, want to get more in depth on the individual initiatives, this is your opportunity. It's a Survey Monkey, and we'll be looking at this information and sharing that with all of the different agencies to help inform the release of the next funding plan. Okay, and with that, I would like to thank all of my presenters today. Thank you so much. Thank you to NJIT for the help. Everybody have a great night.